So far as I'm concerned, education has but one honorable purpose, one alone. Everything else is nonsense. And that is to train the student to be a respectful and a responsible handler of power. We stop begging at the door of people who reduced us to beggars. Not being able to understand how an African could live over half of the time span of human history and build societies, not only without a jail, but without a word in that language that meant jail. Built a family structure so well designed they didn't need a civil court, because courts were built into the family structure and into the village structure and into the community structure. The family concept, the kinship concept, was developed to the point where hunger was eliminated. But what set in motion the negative transition that brought us to the sorry state where we are today, where there is not one African state in all Africa? If we don't wake up soon, we are in for the greatest single Holocaust in human history. We've got no friends. You should have trained people to handle your harbor. Your people, not foreigners. Train people to keep your people healthy. Train people to lay down your airports. Do it correctly and professionally. And when you don't have all those things functioning for you in your hands, you're an imitation of a state. We have done the wrong thing with our children. Let them have that choice about what to study. You study what we need. We're going to have to be bold enough to line our children up and say that in order to maintain our state, we need so many harbor experts. We need so many mining engineers, so many people who know metals, so many oceanographers, so many people to handle the fisheries. Now what you want to study? You said music. Is it build a state? Integration became a bag of worms that did us more harm than good. Now, while other people are successful while you fail because you lost an essential ingredient, all right, the concept of nation has been wiped from your mind. You don't know how Africans control nations before they took that out of your mind. The Japanese didn't march, they collected. The Jews didn't march, they collected. That's right. They came from a concept called the state. All right. Once you take that concept out of your mind, you are dependent on other people. All right. Amy Ashwood Garvey, Peter Abrams, Zeke of Nigeria, John Stone Kenyatta, later Jomo Kenyatta, came the concept of African independence, African states. Why were these states destroyed? Because the Western world decided they would never let the African handle the wealth of Africa. All right. Why did they let Nelson Mandela superficially come to power? Because they knew Nelson Mandela would not do the most essential thing to come into power, is ask for the restoration of the land. All right. Land is the basis of nation. You do not share land, and they're not going to make any more land. Sheikh Anta Diop, in his book, Africa, the Politics of a Federated State, showed you that the river bottoms of Africa can grow enough food for all Africa and 1/3 of the world. He raised the question, why is Africa buying anything from people outside?
All right.
If you open a store in Chinatown, you wouldn't get one customer.
All right. That's it.
Why do they get so many customers in our neighborhood?
All right.
You need a generation of Africans educated in Africa by other Africans for the express purpose of serving Africa, with no concern about who likes it or dislikes it.
All right.
You got all the land available to you, and yet you buy most of your food from other people and lose most of the land through taxation that you could pay. All ethnic groups control at least the real estate in their neighborhood.
All right.
Until you manage the wealth-producing resources of your neighborhood or your nation, you are not free.
All right.
When you are dependent on your former colonial master or your former slave master for the safety pin that holds your child's diaper together, you are not free.
All right.
To be a slave is not necessarily to be hungry. To be a slave is not necessary to work hard. To be a slave is not to be able to determine your own destiny.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum. When it was announced that I was no longer in the Black Muslim movement, it was pointed out that it was my intention to work among the 22 million non-Muslim Afro-Americans, and that we would have some kind of meeting and determine at a later date whether to form a black nationalist party or a black nationalist army. One of the first things that the independent African nations did was to form an organization called the Organization of African Unity. The purpose of our Organization of Afro-American Unity, which has the same aim and objective, to fight whoever gets in our way, to bring about the complete independence of people of African descent here in the Western Hemisphere, and first here in the United States, and bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary. There are more Africans here in Harlem than exist in any city on the African continent, because that's what you and I are, Africans. Because that's what you and I are, Africans.
When we have our own land, we can dig the natural resources from the earth. Land is the basis of all economic security. Land is essential to freedom, justice, and equality. Land is essential to true independence. Africans aren't asking for integration, they're asking for land. In Kenya, they told the white man to get out. Uganda, they told the white man to get out. Tanganyika, they told the white man to get out. In the Congo, Lumumba told the white man to get out.
The economic philosophy of black nationalism only means that we should own and operate and control the economy of our community. You would never find, you can't open up a black store in a white community. White man won't even patronize you. And he's not wrong. He got sense enough to look out for himself. And you who don't have sense enough to look out for yourself. The white man is too intelligent to let someone else come and gain control of the economy of his community. But you will let anybody come in and control the economy of your community. control the housing, control the education, control the jobs, control the businesses, under the pretext that you want to integrate. And because these Negroes who have been misled, misguided, are breaking their necks to take their money and spend it with the man. The man is becoming richer and richer, and you're becoming poorer and poorer. And then what happens? The community in which you live becomes a slum. It becomes a ghetto. The conditions become run down. And then you have the audacity to complain about poor housing in a run-down community. Why, you run it down yourself when you take your dollar.
Well, in other words, then you think the Negro has first to raise himself to a status of equality with the white community.
Yes.
Now, what happens, assuming that he can do that? Would you then be in favor of integration, let's say, in the schools or any place else?
When you are equal with another person, the problem of integration doesn't even arise. It doesn't come up. The Chinese in this country aren't asking for integration. The Japanese aren't asking for integration. The only minority in America that's asking for integration is the so-called Negro, primarily because he is inferior, not inherently inferior, but he's economically, socially, politically inferior, and this exists because he has never tried to stand on his own 2 feet and do something for himself. He has filled the role of a beggar.
But how, from a practical point of view, can the Negro be self-sufficient?
The black man in America has a purchasing power of $20 billion. Now, and he's educated. If the white man can come here uneducated and as an immigrant, and within 10 or 15 years set up an industry that provides job opportunities and educational opportunities for black people, then if the black man, the black leadership, who has access to all of this money and has all of these degrees today, can't use his talent and his know-how to set up business opportunities, job opportunities, housing opportunities for the black people, the same as the white leaders have done for white people, then these black leaders need to get off the boat. They're not leading our people toward any kind of independence, but they're using their positions and their education and their talent to exploit our people worse than the slave master did during slavery. The black man should be given the opportunity and the incentive to do for himself what the white man has done for himself. If you have an all-white neighborhood, you don't call it a segregated neighborhood, but you call an all-black neighborhood a segregated neighborhood. And why? Because the segregated neighborhood is the one that's controlled by from the outside by others. But a separate neighborhood is a neighborhood that is independent, it's equal, it can stand on its own 2 feet, such as the white neighborhood. His goal should be the solution of the problem of the black man in America. Now, not integration. Integration is the method toward obtaining that goal. And what the Negro leader has done is gotten himself wrapped up in the method and has forgotten what the goal is. The goal is the dignity of the black man in America. He wants respect as a human being. Having an opportunity to ride either on the front or the back or in the middle of someone else's bus doesn't dignify you. When you have your own bus, then you have dignity. When you have your own school, you have dignity. When you have your own country, you have dignity. When you have something of your own, you have dignity. How can people, a group of people such as our people, who own no factories, have equal job opportunities competing against a race that owns the factories? The only way the two can have equal job opportunities is if black people have factories as well as white people have factories. And then we can employ whites or we can employ blacks, just like they can employ whites or they can employ blacks. But as long as the factories are in the hands of the whites, the housing is in the hands of the whites, the school system is in the hands of the whites, you have a situation where the blacks are constantly begging the whites, can they use this or can they use that? That's not any kind of equality of opportunity, nor does it lend toward one's dignity.
On our own land, we can set up farms, factories, businesses. We can establish our own government and become an independent nation. And once we become separated from the jurisdiction of this white nation, we can then enter into trade and commerce for ourselves with other independent nations. This is the only solution. Land is the basis of all economic security. Land is essential to freedom, justice, and equality. Land is essential to true independence.
When we talk about revolution, we must talk about changing values. We must talk about changing values, and we must understand these values. The land belongs to everybody. Under this concept of private property, it reaches its epitome in this nonsensical concept of individualism at the expense of the group. These values are important because in a capitalist system, individualism, I, me, this is mine, these are the values which we must now fight. It is far better if all of us get together and say we have one interest, building the nation and serving the people, and build our national products. And as they get bigger, we will divide the piece evenly among ourselves. It's refreshingly different. They're building, but they know they must destroy. So they're ready to destroy, but they are preoccupied with building, not with destroying. So when someone says they're revolutionary and they come to you and they're preoccupied with destruction, understand they're not revolutionary. They're anarchist at best. Political organization is a prerequisite to economic organization. This must be clear. And so when we change over during our political organization, we will be indoctrinating ourselves with values found in our traditional African society under communalism, which will serve as a guidelines to keep us under a new system. And under that system, man becomes more important than money. Once we understand that Africa is our home, we understand that the building of Africa, the creating of strong revolutionary power bases in Africa will be that which will act as our sure protectors wherever we are scattered across this world. We must understand that. We must understand that the building of Africa must mean its total and complete liberation, its unification, and an all-African government which follows scientific socialism down the line. Example, I've just seen this paper from the Workers' Vanguard, which says that the Black Power era has come to an end. They're wrong. It has not come to an end. Black Power has evolved to pan-africanism, which is its logical extension. Black Power means black people coming together and get power. Where are you going to get more power in the hands of black people than in Africa, our own homeland? It's logical extension. They don't understand Marx and Lenin. They try to distort our movement. They try to deceive our movement. They would have you believe that anti-imperialist struggle can precede nationalist awakening. This is nonsense. Wherever revolution has spread its fires, it has been preceded by nationalist awakening in the form of national liberation fronts. Thus, black people in this country must have a nationalist awakening. We must have it. And that awakening must manifest itself in a black united front across the world, not just America. We cannot be stingy about our fight. Let's spread it out.
I'd like to ask you, since you've been in Guinea, you must have come across Cabral, who just was assassinated by colonial imperialism. And I'd like you to give us some view, since a lot of the students here don't even know Cabral. If you would give us some information, and thank you.
Thank you. Brother Amilcar Cabral was the leader of the PAIGC. It is a guerrilla movement, a liberation movement, a movement which is fighting with arms in its hand against Portuguese imperialism backed by NATO forces in Africa. Their fight is for part of our continent, which is adjacent to Guinea. I have the privilege and the pleasure and the honor of meeting Brother Cabral, working with him, seeing him many times. In 1970, when the Portuguese invaded our country, under barbaric forces aligned with NATO, the Portuguese fascists made their number one target the headquarters of the PAIGC. They attacked the headquarters and they burnt a house because there were two houses which were similar. They looked alike. And Mr. Cabral lived in one. And they burnt the house thinking it was Brother Cabral's house. He wasn't there. He was in the house next door. I think they killed the daughter and the wife of a Czechoslovakian gun expert. But the brothers of PAIGC fought. They withstood the attack. The Portuguese assumed that they must get Mr. Cabral in order to stop the movement. PAIGC had reached the proportions where this year they had all intentions to declare independence against the Portuguese. Obviously a threat against Portuguese stronghold in Africa, simply because with PAIGC showing the headway, it's just a matter of time before brothers in Angola and Mozambique were to follow the example, be inspired by the courageous struggle of their brothers on the eastern front of Africa.
Now, if we talk about true equality, then we have to move to a position where we can define.
Thank you, my friend.
We have to tell our black brothers who or graduated from colleges, that to be successful is not to get a job with IBM or Wall Street, but we have to define success for them, and we have to say that to be successful is to come back into your community and Ralph Bunch may make $1,000, but the food he eats don't feed my belly. So he is not helping his race. He is helping their race. Miss Simone says something very significant in her song, Mississippi Goddamn. She says this country is built on lies. They told you and me that if we worked hard and if we sweated, that we would succeed and become rich. And if that were true, I tell you, we would own this country. We have to tell them that Rockefeller ain't never lifted a finger in his life, and neither did Bobby Kennedy. And neither did Bobby Kennedy. And the reason that we are the way we are is because they did it, not we ourselves. We are not inherently bad. You have oppressed us. You went to Africa with the Bible. We had the land. When you left Africa, you had the land and we had the Bible.
We want black power. We want black power. We want black power. We want black power. What do you want? We don't want anybody to move. The time for running has come to an end. You tell them white folk in Mississippi that all the scared niggas are dead.
This demonstrates to us this evening that things still must be dealt with firmly and with power here in the state of Mississippi. Now, don't you know, if we had political and economic power, they wouldn't think of assembling here trying to get off of our own school ground.
This is what we have to do. Now, the other thing we'll have to do is this. Always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. Now, we are poor people. Individually, we are poor when you compare us with white society in America. We are poor. Never stop to get that collectively, that means all of us together, collectively we are richer than all the nations in the world with the exception of 9. Did you ever think about that? The American Negro collectively is richer than most nations of the world. We have an annual income of more than $30 billion a year, which is more than all of the exports of the United States and more than the national budget of Canada. Did you know that? That's power right there if we know how to pool it. And we come by here to ask you to make the first item on your agenda fair treatment where God's children are concerned. Now, if you are not prepared to do that, we do have an agenda that we must follow. And our agenda calls for withdrawing economic support from you. So as a result of this, we're asking you tonight to go out and tell your neighbors not to buy Coca-Cola in Memphis. Go by and tell them not to buy Seal Test milk. Tell them not to buy, what is the other bread? Wonder Bread. And what is the other bread, come to Jesse?
Tell them not to buy heart's bread. Now, not only that, we've got to strengthen black institutions. I call upon you to take your money out of the banks downtown and deposit your money in Tri-State Bank. We want a bank-in movement in Memphis. Go by the Savings and Loan Association. I'm not asking you something that we don't do ourselves in SCLC. Judge Hooks and others will tell you that we have an account here in the Savings and Loan Association from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. We are telling you to follow what we are doing. Put your money there. You have 6 or 7 black insurance companies here in the city of Memphis. Take out your insurance there. We want to have an insurance in. Now, these are some practical things that we can do. We begin the process of building a greater economic base. And at the same time, we are putting pressure where it really hurts. Now, I ask you to follow through here.
Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you. They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find a leadership of our own to make ourselves free men. Our great scholars, having passed through the colleges and universities, have thrown away the blessed record. Babylon did it. Assyria did it. France under Napoleon did it. Germany under Prince von Bismarck did it. England under America under George Washington did it. Africa with 400 million black people can do it. If you cannot do it, if you are not prepared to do it, then you will die. You race of cowards, you race of imbeciles, you race of good for nothing. If you cannot do what other men have done, what other nations have done, what other races have done, then you had better die. Can we do it? We can do it. We shall do it. We have prayed to God for vision and for leadership. And He has given us a universal vision. A vision that will not limit our possibilities to America. A vision that will not limit our possibilities to the West Indies, but a vision that said there must be a free and redeemed Africa.
The comrades have pointed out that Marcus Garvey, when he led that struggle from Jamaica 35, 40 years ago, he was leading at the time an anti-colonial struggle, an anti-imperialist struggle, a struggle that was aimed at bringing benefits to the poor of Jamaica and the region. Today in our country, we can draw a parallel from the experience of the Marcus Garvey movement with our own movement in Grenada, as we too are engaged now in another historic task of struggling against imperialism. Imperialism understands very well that the end result of what we are trying to build is the construction of a new civilization right here in the Caribbean. They understand very well that the new socio-economic formation, the new democratic grassroots organization, the new approach to building the country, the new approach to involving the people and getting the people to participate, they understand that if that model is allowed to succeed, then other people in other islands will ask the question, how come little Grenada, with even less dollars than us, can bring free health care? How come little Grenada, with even less resources than we have, can bring free secondary education? How come little Grenada can bring programs to benefit the small farmers, programs to benefit the youth, to benefit the women? How come this small country that only 2 years ago was doing exactly the same like the rest of us is today well on the way towards constructing this new society? They understand the importance of Grenada standing up in the world and saying that we are not in anybody's backyard, that we have a right to build our own country in our own image and likeness and after a fashion and form that our people want. They understand what it means when the Grenadian Revolution says that the resources of our people will be used for the benefit of our people and not for the benefit of big, ligaroo, multinational corporations. They understand what all of that means, and they see that as dangerous to the survival of the system of imperialism.
Unemployment, hunger, malnutrition, disease, illiteracy. These are the crimes and the sins that are visited upon the poor developing countries of the third world, while the industrialized countries continue to exploit our resources and to keep the profits. But yet, sisters and brothers, in the face of all of that, the Grenada Revolution has nonetheless continued to go forward and to make progress. At a time when even the big, powerful, industrialized nations were growing backwards last year, we grew forward by 5.5%. The revolution in Grenada, starting from a base from Gary of 49% unemployment, coming from that base, when we did a census last year, April 1982, the unemployment rate had dropped from 49% to down to 14.2%. We have been able to make these accomplishments because in Grenada, consistent with our 3 pillars of the revolution, where the first pillar of the revolution is our people, who are always at the center and heart and focus of all of our activities, we are able to mobilize and organize the people to cut out waste, to cut out corruption, to stamp on inefficiency, to move to planning, to look out for production, to check on productivity, to make sure that state enterprises are not set up to be subsidized, but that state enterprises too must become viable, must make a profit, and therefore the state sector will then have the surplus to bring the benefits. We have been able to pull our people into the whole economic process. They give all kinds of reasons and excuses, some of them credible, some utter rubbish. There's an interesting one that we saw very recently in a secret report of the State Department. I want to tell you about that one, so you can reflect on that one. That secret report made this point, that Grenada is different to Cuba and Nicaragua, and the Grenada Revolution is in one sense even worse, I'm using their language, than the Cuban and Nicaraguan revolutions, because the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada speaks English and therefore can communicate directly to the people of the United States. But I want to tell you what that same report also said, and said that also made us very dangerous. And that is that the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada are predominantly black. They said that 95% of our population is black, and they had a correct statistic. And if we have 95% of predominantly African origin in our country, then we can have a dangerous appeal to 30 million black people in the United States.
Brothers, with everybody's support, we will make peace at home. We will be able to use Africa's full potential, as well as develop our country because our land is rich. We have enough manpower and we have a very large market. From the north to the south, to the east to the west, we have enough brain power to create. Or at least go and learn science and technology where it can be learned from. Mr. President, let's present a united front. Let's make sure that the African market belongs to Africans. Let's produce in Africa, manufacture in Africa, and consume in Africa. Let's produce what we need and consume what we produce. Instead of importing goods, Burkina Faso came here to show our locally produced cotton, woven in Burkina Faso, tailored in Burkina Faso, to clothe our own people. I, along with my delegation, am dressed by our tailors, our farmers. Not a single thread comes from Europe or America. But simply, I would like to say that we must accept to live the African way. It's the only way to live in freedom and with dignity.
After the murder of men, women, children, and babies, and the rape of South Africa, a criminal settler colony that has been established like Israel there in that part of the world, I cannot go along with one man, one vote. Let me say why. If someone broke into your home, Mr. Donahue, and actually bum-rushed your home, and black boots stomped your door down, and came in and robbed and raped everyone in the household, and was able to take the wealth of your home and parlay it into an empire. This is an invader. This is an intruder. This is a murderer. This is a burglar. This is a criminal. So you have no responsibility to share your home with them after they broke in and committed the crimes that they did.
You want...
For these collaborators to conspire with our enemy and set up a damn parking lot. To hell with a parking lot. Put Macy's on a parking lot. Put Dwayne Reed in a damn parking lot. We don't want no damn parking lot. We want 125th Street. Every black under the sound of my voice. 125th Street might not be Wall Street, but it damn sure is y'all street. Main business artery of Harlem. The jugular vein of the black business district in Harlem. If you choke the life out of 125th Street, if you cut us at the jugular vein, then we start hemorrhaging all over Harlem. Harlem Hospital goes. Huh? Black businesses throughout Harlem go because 125th Street sets up the basis and the foundation for the black dollar to circulate in the black community. Yes, it does. But the white man does not want us to build black economy. He does not want us to buy black. So we should shut it down.
Not a one of us should be seen shopping from no cracker, no Korean, nowhere on 125th Street. Tell your mother, tell your father, tell your brother, tell your sister, tell your cousin, tell your girlfriend, tell your boyfriend, tell your husband, tell your wife, don't buy a goddamn thing from 125th Street. Shut them down! Shut them down! Run these blood-sucking crackers out of town! Set them down! Shut them down! Run these blood-suckers out of town!
We all Africans. We all black. Huh? To our brothers and sisters there, the same dog that bit you bit us too. I see the brothers and sisters who are not born here in New York, out on the front lines. That's why many of us, this is a family meeting. I'm going to talk to you tonight. They got off the plane and they went to work doing for self up and down 125th Street. And when you looked up, they were taking care of business. And some of you got angry with them. You got jealous. You got envious. And you went and pushed their tables to the side. So you ain't got no business coming here, setting up no business. Well, you weren't doing anything until they came and started doing it. What in the hell is wrong with you? I want to organize some black men. What would have happened if 500 black men would have showed up on 125th Street? I ain't talking about with no damn picket sign. I'm talking about war. I'm talking about being willing to defend your women and your children and your babies. I'm talking about being willing to defend your interests. The white man defends his interests. His woman respects him. His children respect him. His babies respect him.
As we move toward the 4 o'clock hour where we can't just depend on this once a year, it's the only major black power rally in the country. But we need to focus on a nation of our own. We can't call Harlem ours. It's inside of the hills of North America. We need some of this good earth, as I said earlier, to call our own. We must free the land. We need our own states. Have respect for the liberation and salvation of the black nation. There must be black power. We must rebuild the movement of the 60s. We are building this black power movement, and we put it one black block with another black block, one black block after another, one block at a time. Black power! Black power! We'll be here every year. If I'm dead and gone, you carry it on. If I'm dead and gone, you carry it on. If I'm dead and gone, you carry it on. We must have a black power rally. We can no longer just have these Uncle Tom Negroes calling for integration. We have begged the white man for 400 years. He's given us affirmative action that we thought was affirmative, but reparations is real affirmative action. Giving us voting rights. What the hell good are voting rights when you understand that the popular vote in a presidential election means nothing? The struggle of freedom, the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality, liberation and salvation must here today be rooted in your hearts. The desire, the will to build black institutions must be rooted in your hearts.
Whatever your philosophy and ideology is of your organization, stay right with your organization. Just accept black nationalism as your major goal and objective. He said if you're in the church, stay right in the church and organize in the church. You don't have to leave the church. We want to build an African United Front. We want revolutionary Christians. We want revolutionary Muslims. We want revolutionary black Hebrews. We want revolutionary Yoruba. We want revolutionary black men and women who believe in the principles of Maya and study ancient Kemet. We want revolutionary atheists. We want revolutionary agnostic. We want revolutionary socialists. We want revolutionaries no matter what school or movement or organization you come from. We must build an African United Front. And we must accept revolution. We must accept liberation. We must accept freedom and independence as our primary goals and objectives. And in building such an African United Front, there are rules that we must adhere to. We can't backbite each other. We can't talk against each other. We have to control this. In building an African United Front, you got to control your tongue. You can't be quick to fly off the handle and say something with loose lips about your brother, about your sister, who is a part of that African United Front that you're building. You got to be careful and guard your words, guard your mouth, and make sure that you don't backbite, I repeat, your brothers and your sisters.
But what kind of leader uses those words when there are people's lives at risk?
A strong leader, a bold leader, an uncompromising leader.
We've talked about many topics. Let's now discuss your 7-point plan. And is it realistic? I mean, one of the things that you're talking about is paying African Americans for slavery. Yes, sir. Now, President of the United States, how many presidents did it take to apologize for slavery? You have to know that that's not realistic. Reparations, it won't happen.
Well, sir, the Japanese were paid reparations. The people who are called Jews were paid reparations. Some of our brothers and sisters of the indigenous people who are called by the white man Indians, some of our brothers and sisters were paid reparations. And we can never say that it is unrealistic. It is a goal. It is a platform. It is a just demand against our oppressors and those who indeed owe us to repair the damage. So because you feel that it is unrealistic is not reason enough that the youth would take it from the 7-point program of action.
Can you answer quickly?
Please allow me to do that. I thank you. Number one, the program of action for the Million Youth March 1999 is to end police murder and brutality and the harassment of our people. Point number two, self-defense of the black community. To build the people's militia as a self-defense unit as the Constitution of white America allows for. Number three, control of the politics and economics in our communities. Build independent political, social, and financial institutions in our community. All realistic goals. Number four, build independent schools, black liberation schools, community control schools, alternative schools, where we can train and teach our children a proper knowledge of self and education that will lead to one of our sub-themes of the march is saving our youth, securing our future, black power into the year 2000.
It's time for break.